The day my doctor said severe osteoporosis felt like someone had just given me an expiration date. I was only 52. Too young, I thought, for my bones to be betraying me like this. The bone density scan showed I had the skeleton of someone in their 80s. The fracture risk was so high that my doctor warned me to be careful, even getting out of bed in the morning. That was 4 years ago. Today, my bone density has increased by 9.2%, moving me from the severe osteoporosis category to just moderate bone loss. My doctor actually asked what I'd been doing because he rarely sees numbers reverse like mine did. So what happened between that devastating diagnosis and today? That's exactly what I'm going to share with you. I still remember sitting in that sterile exam room, the fluorescent lights making everything look harsher than it probably was. The doctor had this look, you know, the one where they're trying to be professional but you can tell the news isn't good. Your T-score is -3.5 in your hip and -3.2 in your spine, he said, sliding the report across his desk. That's well into the osteoporosis range. When I asked what that meant for my life, his answer was blunt: be extremely careful. Avoid high-impact activities. Consider medication. And honestly, prepare yourself for the possibility that a minor fall could result in a serious fracture. I've always been independent. I hiked. I gardened. I played with my grandkids without a second thought. And suddenly I was being told to live like I was made of glass. That wasn't a life I was willing to accept. But I'll be honest, I went home and cried that night. I called my daughter and heard the worry in her voice. I looked around my 2-story house and wondered if I should sell it because of the stairs. I canceled my upcoming hiking trip with friends. For about 2 weeks, I let fear run my life. And then, something in me just rebelled. I've never been one to just accept things without question. Maybe it's the journalist in me. I spent 30 years investigating stories, digging for facts, looking beyond the obvious answers. So I started researching. Not just the standard medical advice, but everything I could find about bone health. I read medical journals. I joined online forums. I talked to people who'd been diagnosed years before me. And what I discovered gave me hope. Bone isn't static. It's living tissue that's constantly remodeling itself. And while age certainly affects that process, there are multiple factors we can influence. The turning point came when I found a study showing that some people had actually improved their bone density through specific combinations of nutrition, targeted exercise, and lifestyle changes. Not just slowed the loss, actually reversed it. I printed that study and taped it to my refrigerator. It became my North Star. If they could do it, why couldn't I? So I made a decision. I would give myself 1 year of dedicated effort before considering the heavy-duty medications my doctor was pushing. I would create my own osteoporosis reversal protocol based on science, not fear. I want to be crystal clear here, I'm not anti-medication. For many people, osteoporosis drugs are necessary and life-saving. But I wanted to see how far I could get with natural approaches first, keeping medication as my backup plan. Let's talk about what I actually did, starting with nutrition. Now we all know calcium is important for bones. But what I didn't realize was how many other nutrients play crucial roles in bone health. The first thing I did was dramatically increase my protein intake. Research shows that low protein consumption is associated with greater bone loss and fracture risk, especially as we age. I aimed for at least 100 grams daily, focusing on complete protein sources like eggs, fish, and Greek yogurt. But here's what surprised me: vitamin K2 became my secret weapon. While calcium gets all the attention, vitamin K2 is the traffic director that tells calcium where to go. Without enough K2, calcium can end up in your arteries instead of your bones. I started eating natto, a fermented soybean product that's the richest source of K2 on the planet. I'll be honest, it's an acquired taste with a texture that's challenging, but I mixed it with rice and tamari sauce twice a week. For those days when I just couldn't face natto, I took a high-quality K2 supplement. Magnesium was another game changer. About 60% of the magnesium in your body is stored in your bones, and most Americans are deficient. I added pumpkin seeds, spinach, and almonds to my daily diet, and took magnesium glycinate before bed, which had the added benefit of improving my sleep. Then there's vitamin D, calcium's essential partner. Living in the Pacific Northwest means I don't get enough sun exposure for natural vitamin D production, especially in winter. Blood tests showed my levels were at 22 ng/ml, well below the optimal range of 40-60. I started supplementing with 5,000 IU daily and getting my levels checked every 3 months until I reached the optimal range. But perhaps the most surprising nutritional change was what I eliminated. I significantly reduced my consumption of ultra-processed foods, which research shows can interfere with nutrient absorption and increase inflammation. And I cut back on sodium, which can increase calcium excretion through urine. One warning, though, don't make all these changes at once like I did. My digestive system rebelled for about 3 weeks. Start gradually and build up to the full protocol. Now let's talk about what I believe was the most powerful component of my reversal strategy: targeted exercise. When I was first diagnosed, my doctor told me to avoid high-impact activities, which made sense for safety. But in my research, I discovered that bones actually need certain types of mechanical loading to stimulate new bone formation. I found the work of Drs. Belinda Beck in Australia, who had conducted studies showing that carefully designed, progressive resistance training could significantly improve bone density in postmenopausal women with osteoporosis. The key was finding the sweet spot between enough impact to stimulate bone growth, but not so much that it risked fractures. This is definitely not a DIY situation. I worked with a physical therapist who specializes in osteoporosis to design a safe program. We focused on 3 types of exercise. First, progressive resistance training using weights that challenged me. I started with light weights in proper form, then gradually increased the load as I got stronger. The emphasis was on compound movements that stressed the spine and hips, the areas most vulnerable to osteoporotic fractures. Second, impact training. This wasn't running or jumping, which would have been too risky given my bone density. Instead, I did modified impact exercises like step-ups, heel drops, and controlled movements that provided gentle impact to my skeleton. Third, balance and posture work. Falls are the biggest risk with osteoporosis, so I dedicated time to exercises that improved my stability, core strength, and body awareness. I exercised 4 days a week, with each session lasting about 45 minutes. Monday and Thursday were resistance training. Tuesday and Friday were impact and balance work. Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday were for walking and recovery. The first month was humbling. I could barely lift 5-pound dumbbells for some exercises. But by month 6, I was using 15 to 20 pounds for many movements. My body was changing visibly too. I developed muscle definition I hadn't seen since my 30s. But the most important change was invisible. The mechanical stress on my bones was triggering osteoblast activity, the cells responsible for building new bone tissue. It wasn't comfortable and there were days I wanted to quit, but I kept reminding myself, this discomfort is actually the sensation of my bones rebuilding. Something I didn't expect to be part of my bone building protocol was stress management. But the connection between chronic stress and bone loss is powerful. When you're stressed, your body produces cortisol. In short bursts, that's fine. But chronic elevation of cortisol interferes with bone building and accelerates bone breakdown. It's like having a demolition crew working overtime while the construction team is understaffed. I had to acknowledge that my stress levels were through the roof. Between work deadlines, family responsibilities, and now this health crisis, I was operating in a constant state of fight or flight. So I committed to daily stress reduction practices. I started with just 5 minutes of meditation each morning, gradually building to 20 minutes. I used the Insight Timer app, which has specific meditations for health challenges. I also adopted a practice called box breathing, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding for 4 before starting again. I did this whenever I felt stress rising during the day. But perhaps even more important than managing stress was prioritizing sleep. Research shows that poor sleep quality and disrupted sleep patterns are independently associated with reduced bone mineral density. I had been functioning on 5-6 hours of broken sleep for years, wearing my sleep deprivation like a badge of honor. "I'll sleep when I'm dead" was my not-so-funny joke. Well, with osteoporosis, that timeline was looking uncomfortably accelerated. So I created a sleep sanctuary. No screens in the bedroom. Blackout curtains. Cool temperature. A consistent sleep and wake schedule even on weekends. I also discovered that the magnesium I was taking for bone health had the added benefit of improving my sleep quality. Within a month, I was regularly getting 7-8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, and I felt like a different person. The connection between these lifestyle factors and bone health became crystal clear when I had a particularly stressful month at work, with several late nights and tight deadlines. My next urine NTX test, a marker of bone breakdown, showed a significant increase in bone loss during that period, even though I had maintained my nutrition and exercise protocols. That was a powerful lesson. Bone health isn't just about what you eat and how you move. It's about how you live. One of the frustrating aspects of addressing osteoporosis is that the standard measurement tool, the DEXA scan, is typically only done every 2 years. That's a long time to wait to know if your approach is working. So I found alternative ways to track my progress, which not only gave me useful data but also helped maintain my motivation. First, I used a biomarker test called NTX, which measures the rate of bone turnover through a urine sample. This test detects collagen fragments that are released when bone breaks down. By testing every 3 months, I could see if my protocol was reducing the rate of bone breakdown long before my next DEXA scan. When I started, my NTX levels were 65 BCE/mmol creatinine, well above the target range of 26-43 for postmenopausal women. After 6 months on my protocol, they had dropped to 47. By 1 year, they were at 38, within the optimal range. I also tracked functional fitness measures that correlate with bone strength. My physical therapist helped me establish baselines for how long I could hold a plank position, how many wall push-ups I could do, how long I could stand on one leg with eyes closed. These measurements gave me tangible evidence that my body was getting stronger, which helped during those inevitable moments of doubt. I kept detailed records of everything: my food intake, supplement schedule, exercise sessions, sleep quality, and stress levels. This not only helped me stay accountable, but also allowed me to identify patterns and make adjustments. For example, I noticed that my NTX levels tended to rise slightly during the darkest winter months, despite maintaining my protocol. This led me to increase my vitamin D supplementation during those periods, which seemed to help stabilize my bone markers. The day I finally had my follow-up DEXA scan, I was terrified. I'd put so much work into my protocol, but what if it hadn't made a difference? What if my bones had continued to deteriorate despite everything? I sat in the waiting room, trying to prepare myself for disappointment. When the technician called me back, I could barely breathe. The doctor pulled up my results on the screen, looked at them, then looked at me. "I don't see this often," he said. "Your bone mineral density has increased by 9.2% in your spine and 5.1% in your hip. That's moved you from the severe osteoporosis category to osteopenia in your spine and mild osteoporosis in your hip. I just sat there, unable to speak, as tears rolled down my face. All those early mornings exercising when I wanted to sleep in. All those natto meals I'd forced down. All the meditation sessions when my mind wouldn't stop racing. It had actually worked. Now I want to be transparent about the mistakes I made along the way, because learning what doesn't work is just as valuable as learning what does. My first mistake was trying too many supplements without proper research. In my initial panic after diagnosis, I bought nearly $300 worth of supplements that promised to strengthen bones naturally. Most were combinations of ingredients at doses too low to be effective, or they contained forms of nutrients that aren't well absorbed. I eventually learned to look for specific research-backed supplements in their most bioavailable forms, like vitamin D3, vitamin K2 as MK7, and calcium as calcium citrate. Another mistake was pushing too hard, too fast with exercise. About 2 months into my program, I decided that if the weight-bearing exercise was good, more must be better. I increased my weight significantly and added extra sessions without giving my body time to recover. The result? A muscle strain in my lower back that sidelined me for 3 weeks. This taught me the critical lesson that recovery is as important as the exercise itself, especially when you're dealing with compromised bone density. I also initially overlooked the importance of proper form during exercises. I was so focused on the weight and repetitions that I didn't pay enough attention to alignment and technique. My physical therapist eventually corrected this, emphasizing that improper form not only reduces the bone-building benefits, but also increases fracture risk. Perhaps my biggest mistake was isolating myself. For the first 6 months, I told very few people about my diagnosis or my reversal plan. I was embarrassed and didn't want to be seen as fragile or old. This meant I was trying to make significant lifestyle changes without a support system. Eventually, I opened up to close friends and family, and even found an online community of others working to reverse osteoporosis naturally. Their encouragement and shared experiences became invaluable on difficult days. Finally, I made the mistake of becoming too rigid. I created such strict rules for myself that any deviation felt like failure. If I missed a workout or ate something non-compliant, I would berate myself mercilessly. This perfectionism actually increased my stress levels, which, as we've discussed, is counterproductive for bone health. I had to learn to build flexibility into my protocol and focus on consistency over perfection. So here I am 4 years after that devastating diagnosis, sharing my journey with you. I'm not cured, osteoporosis doesn't work that way. But I've significantly improved my bone density, reduced my fracture risk, and reclaimed the active life I love. I still follow my protocol, though it's evolved over time. I still get regular checkups and DEXA scans. And yes, I still eat natto, though I've found ways to make it more palatable. But more than anything, I've discovered that our bodies have a remarkable capacity for regeneration when we give them the right tools. Age is just one factor in bone health, not the determining factor. If you're facing an osteoporosis or osteopenia diagnosis, I hope my story gives you hope. This doesn't have to be a one-way journey toward greater fragility and limitation. You have more power than you might think. Start by having detailed conversations with your healthcare providers. Consider seeking out specialists who stay current with the latest research on bone health. Find a physical therapist who specializes in osteoporosis. Get comprehensive testing beyond just the standard DEXA scan. And remember that small, consistent actions accumulate into significant results over time. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Choose one area to focus on first, perhaps nutrition or a safe exercise program, and build from there. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe to the Osteo-Safe Fitness channel. I post new videos every week with specific exercises, nutrition tips, and the latest research on natural approaches to bone health. In my next video, I'll be demonstrating the exact resistance training routine that helped rebuild my bone density, with modifications for different starting points. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Remember, your diagnosis is information, not a sentence. With the right approach, you might be surprised by what's possible. Until next time, here's to strong bones and a vibrant life.